Good evening, everybody. This is a special meeting of the Grosse Township Public Services Commission for Thursday, December 22nd. Normally, we meet on Tuesday nights, the second Tuesday of every month, and that's our schedule. But because, if you watch the entire meeting, because of some bids taken for our wastewater treatment plant, we've been delayed. It's not on? Is it on now? We'll start over. Sorry. This is the December 22nd special meeting of the Public Services Commission. Normally we meet on the second Tuesday of every month, but because of a major bid taken at our wastewater treatment plant and time to review the bids, which if you watch the meeting tonight, you'll understand better our delay. Our township engineer is present.
This is Les Schmidtke.
So at any rate, we're going to start our meeting tonight, call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Call the roll. Costick here. Kennedy. Here. Schmidtke. I guess Les is on the phone.
Yes, but he can't participate in the meeting.
Unable to make the meeting. If you can hear me, Les, we want to
Yes, I
send you
can hear
good
you.
health and wish you a happy holiday.
Thank you very much.
Stanko?
Here.
Biddle?
Here.
John Reilly is not here. And David Nadeau? Here. We have a quorum. Entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda, and I'll make the motion for approval. Is there support? Support. Any objection to tonight's agenda? The one thing I just want to add, Derek mentioned is, under your report, you have the road program.
Yes.
We're not going to spend any money, but I'd like it to be an action item. My intent was that if we approve what's going to go forward, we'd ask our engineers to immediately start the design.
Would you want to make a amendment to the agenda to move this up under action items to action item C? Okay.
Okay, both everybody?
Yes.
So we don't
Yes.
waste any time going forward into the spring. With that change,
I'll support the motion.
so that's an amendment. They do supported it to the agenda. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
The motion passed. Next, we have the minutes of our November 20, 2022 meeting. I'll make a motion for approval.
Support.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in
Yes.
favor indicate by saying aye.
Yes,
Aye.
can you hear me? Can you hear me, Bill?
Did you say something,
On
Les?
the second page at the very bottom, it said that the motion was passed to pay the county extra money. I did not vote for that. I voted nay.
You got it, Derek.
Yeah, yep. Let's just keep in mind that, being that you're calling in, you can listen to the meeting, but you cannot participate in the meeting. Participation by electronic method is not permitted unless you're on military leave. So just keep that in mind throughout the meeting.
Okay. Okay, no problem.
All right, item number, all in favor indicate, of the minutes indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Item 6, approval of the bills. I'll make a motion for approval. Any questions? Is there support?
Support.
Stanko supported. Are there any questions? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have statements of revenues and expenditures for the first 8 months of the fiscal year. Are there any questions? If not, we'll receive and file those. Number 8, we'll have approval of the treasurer's report. I'll make a motion to approve the treasurer's report for November of 2022. Excuse me. Been fighting this little cough, so I need to quit talking. There's no public to comment.
We need a vote on the approval of the treasurer's report. I had a motion and a second. I just need a vote.
All in favor of the treasurer's report indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion's approved. There's no public, I don't see anybody, so floor is yours, Ryan.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Ryan.
We received a letter from Eagle in regards to our CEI inspection. It's a yearly inspection at the wastewater plant, and and there's no further actions on our part. There wasn't any issues with that, so that's good news.
Good letter.
Yep, short and sweet, so that was good. Yep. We're right now in the process of moving the primary one equipment that is at the plant right now to airport storage since it wasn't installed like it should have been by Veolia. That's actually in the process. Because some of it's outside of the plant and then some of it's inside the plant, so that'd be a less hazardous environment for that equipment and that.
But I can expand on that a little bit. If you recall, we had purchased a couple of months ago the equipment, actually it's probably more than a couple of months ago, maybe 6 months ago, the equipment for the rebuild of primary tank 3.
Number one.
Number
Yeah,
one, I'm
yeah,
sorry,
one.
primary tank 1. That was the last remaining primary tank that we had to rebuild. So as we had done with the previous primary tanks, we purchased the equipment up front and then we bid out the installation of that equipment. When we bid out the installation of that equipment, we received 2 bids, with Veolia being the low bidder. There was some questions by Veolia regarding the liability verbiage that was within that contract. The Township and Veolia were not able to come to terms on that language, so as a result, we went ahead and disqualified that bid. The plan is to potentially add on through a change order the installation of that equipment with whatever bidder or contractor we utilize for the ACO work at the plant. So that's kind of the strategy we're going forward with currently. But in the meantime, the equipment still is at the plant and it's actually outside. So what Ryan's referring to is wanting to get that equipment inside. Unfortunately, they don't have room at the plant, so we've talked to the airport. They have some inside storage. We'll move it down here, keep it inside. That way it's not exposed to the elements as we work on scheduling the install of that equipment.
Heavy, isn't it? A lot of it?
Mainly it's just long pieces, fiberglass, and that. And there's a big screw conveyor, so it's long equipment. So that's the thing. It's heavy too. So it's oblong, Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So.
All right,
Yep. Flows have been higher now at the plant, just with snowfall and rain, but still they're a little bit lower than they usually are. I will be working on my capital improvement list for next year at the wastewater plant in the budget, so I'll have that by like February. All my items at the plant, which are in need. So,
Want to speak to the valves, the emergency repair on those valves?
raw sewage pump 3, the arm, the check arm valve that you need that enable for that pump to operate. When we were doing our monthly maintenance on that pump, it's locked up. It's pretty much seized in place, and that is original equipment. It's probably 50 years old, so we are replacing that as an emergency repair, because that is one of our storm pumps that we have to run at the plant. So, and actually process pipe, we got an estimate from process pipe. It's about 30 grand overall, but it's just a lot of labor because that's all down on level 1 there, and it's just real heavy equipment and that hyping. It's a lot of labor and it's a lot, it's a lot of work.
And we're treating that as an emergency repair, so we've already given the authorization to Ryan to contract with Process Pipe to get that work done. It affects the capacity of the plant and the ability to be able to handle wet flows or heavy flows. So we wanted to get working on that ASAP because if you don't, then there's potential, issues with the ability to bring water in and treat water and stuff, and we don't want to have that issue. Obviously, if we have an issue and we know that it's going to affect the capacity of the plant and we don't do anything about it, then we can be liable for issues that occur upstream of that. So in those instances, we want to try to work quickly to get those issues resolved as quickly as possible. We did review the scope of the work with the engineers to make sure that it was adequate and was in line with what needs to be done, and Raines did take a look at that, so we went ahead and authorized that through an emergency authorization, which we have a conversation with the supervisor and the treasurer about that when those things occur.
That's all I got.
Are there any questions from anybody? Ryan? All right, thank you. Next item is wastewater treatment plant, Township manager update with our engineer.
Yep, so first item is action item A, recommendation of award for the wastewater treatment plant capital improvements. This is the ACO work that we've been talking about for a long period of time. I'd like to introduce Sohail Sebek, our engineer, to discuss the scope of the work. Les, just so you're aware, we're going to switch to an overhead. There is the possibility that you might get disconnected when we switch over to this presentation. So if you lose us, that's why, okay?
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. This presentation includes some history about the plant and where we started, where we ended up, and why we're where we're at now. It could take an hour, it could take 6-7 minutes, so I'm going to just pick in between so we don't prolong the meeting. If you have any questions, please stop me and I'll answer them. It's a condensed history that goes through from the beginning of the sewer system all the way through the ACO improvements. Again, this project is called the ACO improvement, ACO number ACO 00023. This is a consent order.
Hold on. What, Mike? Okay,
Thanks. Start from the beginning.
we got it.
Got it? Okay. So this ACO is mandated, is entered between the township and Eagle, so all the work associated with it is mandated, and we don't have too many choices with it. So starting with the history, the sewer system on Gross Thiel was built as a combined sewer system, which means it's a stormwater and sanitary system built together in the early 20s. The main sewer interceptor and wastewater treatment plant construction was approximately in 1965. The sewer separation, whereby the township separated the storm system from the sanitary system, took place in the late 70s, right after the Clean Water Act. The sewer repairs started in 1994 after the system started encountering infiltration inflow, and it started causing backups in the system. So at that point, the township conducted what we call an SSES, where they evaluated the system for infiltration inflow, and we ended up entering into an ACO with the Eagle, then DEQ, and that was signed in 2001. And again, that's because of excessive and frequent overflows. For the ACO compliance, we applied for a state revolving fund. Of course, when we got the ACO, we scored 300 points automatically to help us getting SRF funding. We got SRF funding to do the INI removal, which included removal of inflow sources, sewer lining, manholes rehabilitation, plus it included a capital improvements program. The capital improvement program consisted of installing the north-south interceptor. And that's a sewer we call it a redundant sewer that was built as a backup to the existing interceptor. In case we have overflows from the existing, it will go into the redundant system and transfer to the plant. Plus, it included 6.5 million gallons sewage retention basin and pump station at the wastewater treatment plant. Of course, after every rehab program, we have to do what we call a project performance certification. That's required by EGLE to prove that the rehab program worked or didn't work. So when the project performance certification was conducted, the transport system, which is the north-south interceptor and the sewer that connected to the plant, was very adequate and passed. What didn't pass is the capacity at the plant and the storage tank. That was still deficient because there's still too much water in the system coming to the plant and to the tank. So that triggered another request by EGLE to look at what we call a corrective action plan. At that point, the township retained the services of OHM advisor to conduct the system hydrology. They did a model in 2011. However, because of the lack of the rainfall, they couldn't have a conclusion on what the hydrograph or the system performance would look like. So they did a study in 2012 and 2013. Another flow monitoring and data collection program took place, and we had enough rainfall to generate what we call a hydrologic model recalibration, which means we'll put these flows into the system, tell the system, okay, under this much rainfall, how are you going to behave? Are the sewers going to back up? Is the tank going to back up? Is the tank going to overflow? And based on that, they developed what we call a hydrograph, meeting the SSO policy, which was presented to EGLE and accepted. In essence, what they did, they created a model and told EGLE, this is a model, under these rainfall events, we're going to have these flows, and these flows can be handled at the plant. So 3 options were developed from that model. First option was additional wet weather capacity at the wastewater treatment plant. The second one was a disconnection of footing drains, and the third was additional storage volume at the wastewater treatment plant. The disconnection of footing drains proved to be a little bit too cumbersome, too involved, too costly, and too destructive. Since the township is not laid out like regular subdivisions, you have lots of houses scattered all over. To go in and disconnect the footing drains, take them into a storm system that's not there, you have to build it, you have to connect it to the ditches or to a storm system, is very expensive. At the same time, it's very destructive to the houses. Lots of the houses on Rosil are very large footprints, so to go around and dig all the area around and put sub-drains, connect them to a sump pump and pump them out will be very destructive and be very unpopular from the residents. So that option was put aside. The third option was to add storage at the plant. And again, the plant footprint is very small. We don't have enough room to put more storage to absorb all of that extra flow into it. So option 1, which is additional wet weather capacity of the plant, was the one selected. That option, again, included just increase of the capacity. If we look at the average flow design, we didn't do anything with the average flow. It remained the same. For a 7-day flow, the loading limits were based on 5.2 million gallons a day, but the peak flow design changed from 6.1 MGD, million gallons a day, to 7.1 MGD. And that's what we presented to EGLE, and that's what EGLE accepted. Of course, during that process, there were lots of negotiations with them about the scope, how do you do this, how much it's going to cost, how much money we have. You got to remember, we're still paying on the bonds. The bonds are still, we haven't retired all of them. We got 2024 to retire some of them. So the argument with them was, yes, we will do this work, but we don't have the money now, give us more time. And their time was very strict, very stringent. They wanted things done in 2021. We argued back and forth with them. We retained an attorney. He went and met with them with us. And there were lots of meetings that involved township officials and managers and so forth. And after that, the Eagle people agreed to grant us some relief on the timeline. So the additional wet weather capacity at the plant was developed as a basis of design. How are we going to do this? We have a project. We're going to build this project. We're going to design it in a way that we can process 7.1 million gallons a day. We developed the basis of design, submitted it to Eagle, and we had negotiations about every component of it, which eventually they accepted, and that became what we call the project. And the project was mandated by an amended ACO with Eagle. The project had a timeline, and what I did is, since this is very small and you can't read it on the screen, I provided you extra copies there. I don't know, Derek, if I should bring it up on this or not. If not, we can go over it.
Why don't you just state what the deadline is?
That's better. Yep, we're good.
Anyway, it is a cumbersome schedule. However, it got impacted by COVID. I mean, they wanted deadlines that didn't make sense because we couldn't come back to the office. The offices were closed. We couldn't do topographic survey. We couldn't design. Eventually, back and forth with them, we came up with a schedule that they can live with. And with that, the construction was to start on November 1st, 2023. During the review process, they started having second thoughts that, you know, we have a drop dead date of October 31st, 2025 to finish this project. But the way the economy is going, the way the equipment availability is, the marketplace, the lack of labor, made them double guess the previous schedule that they approved, so they came back and required us to submit a revised schedule of construction. And what you see in yellow and green is the schedule that they accepted. I will not pay too much attention to the November 17th date, but October 12th was the advertisement for bids. That was a key, so we advertised for the project to be bid on October 12th, 2022. We extended the due date twice so we can allow more contractors to bid the project, and we opened bids on November 30th, 2022. Now, the critical date in here is the February 20th, 2023. That's when they want us to start construction, and you see that yellow entry in there. That's non-negotiable with them. We tried to negotiate it, and they said no. And the completion date, of course, is another non-negotiable date. That's October 31st, 2025. Sorry, if I'm rattling too fast, let me know. I can slow down and explain more. Are we
I think you're fine.
okay with that? Okay. So the project scope included the construction of a new 60-foot diameter final clarifier, the replacement of raw sewage pump number 4 with a capacity of 1,700 gallons a minute, the replacement of the existing intermediate lift screw pumps with the new 48-inch screw pumps, each at a pumping capacity of 7.1 MGD firm capacity and associated work. Now, initially, years ago, the capital improvement program included replacing the intermediate lift screw pump with submersible pumps. That was going to be very costly because we were going to tear up the whole area and put a deep wet well and put submersible pumps in there. So we decided instead to refurbish and improve the existing screw pumps and have them provide the 7.1 million gallon capacity. And that came in at half the cost of the other options. So we were very happy that this was selected. It also includes the installation of new secondary sludge pump with a capacity of 150 gallons a minute at 30 feet of total dynamic head. The installation of 2 flow paste sodium hypochlorite feed pumps, the installation of 1 ferric chloride feed pump, and all related piping, electrical, and concrete work. This installation of the clarifier includes lots of sewer pipes that are going to connect the clarifier to the plant, and those are bigger pipes that start at 24-inch and go up to 42-inch. So there's lots of site work involved in this process. Of course, there is restoration and cleanup. So in general, this is the scope. Again, we can expand on it, but for the sake of time, we just listed the items. If you look at the diagram, the aerial over here, you can see where the clarifier number 3 is going to go. That's a yellow clarifier. Of course, it shows some of the piping that connects it to the plant. So all of that is part of it. The RBC if you can point Derek to this building here, to where the screw pumps are, right to the left a little bit, right there. That's where the screw pumps will go. And of course, we can't see where the raw sewage pump is because that's inside the plant. So that's the basic layout of the improvements. Yes, it looks like it's very simplistic, but it is costly because of what's involved in the form of excavation, dewatering, sheet piling, concrete work, piping, and so forth. Bidding. When we went out for bids, we thought that we have to have a mandatory pre-bid. The project is very complicated, it's very involved. We wanted to make sure that whoever bids project is aware of the intricacy of it and every component, every element that's part of this project. So we required a mandatory pre-bid meeting. And 3 bidders attended, the 3 general contractors, and they're pretty much very knowledgeable and experienced. One of them is Sorensen Gross, who submitted the bid. The other was Spence Brothers, and the third was Clark Construction. Now, Clark Construction ended up backing out because of their workload. Apparently, they're super busy, and they just couldn't put a bid together, couldn't commit to the project because of our timeline. The Spence Brothers bid was on the way to the township. Unfortunately, the courier got into an accident on the way, never made it. So they called Derek and notified them that they cannot deliver the bid on time, which leaves us with the Sorensen Gross's bid. They were delivered right on time, and we had no choice but to open the bid and read it. Otherwise, we'll be in violation of the public bidding process. The bid came in at $7.341 million. Now, when we estimated this a year ago, we estimated at 6.5, but meanwhile, during looking at the plant, we found out that some plug valves need to be replaced, so we added to the scope. But the basic bid is 7.341, which is higher than the 6.5 million by 12.9%. It is higher, but however, if you look at the market now, the average bids are coming in at 15% plus above estimates. And this estimate, again, was a year ago. Have we estimated a couple months ago, it would have been pretty much either at 7.3 or higher. So, again, the bid reflects current market conditions due to labor shortage and equipment cost, and price volatility is raging out there. I mean, we cannot get a price that's held more than 2 months out in the market because of availability and labor and so forth. The next slide is time of the essence. Like we said earlier in the timeline, the original construction start date was supposed to be November 1st, 2023, but at the request of Eagle, we had to move it up to February 20th, 2003. Again, Eagle's concern is we want to make sure the township starts this project and finish it on time, because if they violate the October 31st, 2025, there will be stipulated penalties, and those are in the tone of $10,000 a day for every day beyond that date. We can't afford that. We're not going to risk that, and that's not going to happen. I guarantee you it's not going to happen. So, so again, these are the dates that are pretty much locking us into this contract. And that's why we're here, to make sure that we can award the contract so we can get going with it. For the contract award, as I said, the township is committed to the negotiated timeline approved by Eagle. No flexibility on the starting date and completion date. And a contingency of 15% is recommended just in case, because the plant is aging and we have some progressive failures in there. We're concerned that during the work, when we start connecting to things inside, things are going to start failing. So my recommendation is to keep an open mind about having 15% contingency on the project. This is where we're at. I did provide a letter of recommendation to the township, and I did check the references on Sorensen Gross. I checked 5 references, that they all came in very positive. Everybody that they worked for was very happy with them. Some of them gave them more work. Some of them will give them work if they have the opportunity to. So they came in highly recommended. So I don't have any reservation putting my recommendation together to award it to them.
So the first question I have is, what kind of analysis did you do on everything was bid by a unit price?
Was bid as pretty much They will provide the schedule value. It was bid as a lump sum bid because of the intricacy of it. You couldn't decipher it item by item. Again, we worked with OHM on that. Their components for mechanical, electrical, and structural was very difficult to put unit prices on. So their recommendation was we can do it as a lump sum price. Meanwhile, as we award, we can require the contractor to provide what we call a schedule of value, where they can come in and itemize every element they bid and give us a price on it. So that becomes pretty much like a unit price, but after the fact. So
How's that gonna work?
it's very common. We did that with the retention basin pump station, and we did that with the all of the improvements inside the plant. We didn't do that with the piping, because the piping is a measure, we can measure all the pipes out there. It's very common that you ask for a schedule of value after the bids are in. They can disclose them to you, and you can lock them to them, and that's how you pay them. If there are any increases, you use that. If there are any decreases, you use the same values. So I know it's complex, but again, going back and forth with OHM advisors who did the mechanical structural design, they were very uncomfortable deciphering all of their elements into a unit price entity. Like,
How did you, after, in a post-analysis, how did you determine that the contractor's pricing is adequate and they can do the job?
well, they're committed to the pricing, and we believe it's a very competitive price because, again, they didn't know that they're the only bidder on the project. They always knew that Spence Brothers or Clark were going to submit a bid. So they priced it accordingly. We did ask him for a breakdown. We're still waiting for it. But again, we cannot sit and decipher that now at this stage of the game because we're running out of time. And again, once we lock him into the schedule of values, we can check the market value out there with the other contractors. For example, the excavation process. They put a price in for, can I disclose that?
Sure.
They put price for $2 million. We priced it with a local excavator around here. He came in around $2.1 million. And he had to go through an analysis of every component of the site work, from concrete removal replacement to piping, to fittings, to structures, to coring, to saw cutting. All of that came in itemized, and he did itemize his bid. They came in at $2.1 million. So that's one element of it.
A couple quick questions for you. The entirety of the work, all the work that we wanted to do over the plant, wasn't included with this original or with this bid, right? I mean, there's additional work that we wanted to accomplish
Right.
underneath the $10 million bond amount that we set. I guess my question to you is, at the pricing that's been offered for this scope of the project, do you feel comfortable that there's enough revenue left over from that $10 million bond amount that we could accomplish the other remaining work that we want to do?
Yes, because when we talked about the capital improvements, this was one of them. The second was the HVAC system, which we allocated $1 million for, so that puts us at $8,341,000, which leaves us another $1,600,000 for other incidentals. And this does include some additional work, like Brian came in to us and said, I need to replace that plug valve, which is a very costly item. We had that included part of this bid also. That wasn't initially part of it, but now it is. So unless there's an unforeseen that's going to cause this huge change order, we're very comfortable with this.
My only final question at this point is, so you sat down with the contractor, the one contractor, after the bid, and you discussed what with him?
We discussed with them
Every element
first
of it?
their performance, the concrete tank, the site work, the mechanical parts of it. And they were very comfortable with everything except the site work. They couldn't get a bidder to give them a price. And we talked to Spence also about the same thing, the other contractor. They couldn't get a contractor to price it for them. So everybody's busy. Everybody is looking for easy work out there. I mean, these excavators are looking at putting pipe in the miles, not doing intricate stuff like going underneath a clarifier, putting a bend in, saw cutting concrete, coring into a wall. So we were not comfortable with that they couldn't get a price. So we told them we like to get more prices, and we gave them the opportunity. Now they're looking at 4 different contractors, and I can state them. They have MK looking at it. We already had Campo look at it from our side to give them a price, and that's who we worked with, and Campo itemized his price and gave it to them. They have also Di Agostini, and they have their own landscaping guy that was going to do the retaining wall, and they said he's going to give them a price for the excavation. Now, we may not be comfortable with at least 2 of the 3 that they selected, but we know Campo, we know their contractor can do the work, so we will be negotiating.
Open it up to the commission. Dave, do you have any questions?
No,
Dave?
I'm good.
Linda?
No, nothing further.
Ray?
Couple questions. You mentioned this stature of, or the schedule of pricing that they would give to us.
Yes.
What time frame would they provide that to us once we give them the go-ahead on?
Once we award them, it's in the spec, I think 3 weeks after the award, they have to provide that to us. So that will be way before the construction start date.
Is that considered a not-to-exceed pricing when they provide that to us?
That will be the price that we lock into the contract for their work. Now, as far as a not to exceed, that's a terminology that you're limiting them to do this whole project without any extras. There may be some incidentals during construction. They may encounter a condition that we weren't aware of, they weren't aware of, that they're going to claim extra charges on. We may have to look at that time and assess it. So,
But isn't that part of the contingency that we're baking into this project, that $1.1 million, 15% contingency to
That's-
address that kind of thing?
that will be part of the contingency, yes. But we haven't baked that in my recommendation. I didn't mention that. I mentioned it in this presentation only.
So what we would do with that is your motion that you would be making tonight would be modified to say 7.341 million plus a 15% contingency. That would be what you would recommend to the township board. Then the township board would make that approval based upon your recommendation, assuming they support it. So that would be the process.
So if you approve the contingency, any extras that are incidental that are discovered during the construction that we are not aware of will be part of the contingency. You're correct on that term.
No, that's it.
So, as far as the contingency money is concerned, and some of the other elements that the smaller piping modifications that aren't part of this ACO, that we want to, that as you encounter them, you may want to do, right? You already know there's a couple, like the primary clarifier number 1 installation.
Yeah, and that would probably come in as a change order. That's a different project. I don't know that we would charge that. That wouldn't be a part of the contingency for this project. That would be unrelated
Change order.
work.
That'd be a
So-
change order.
Right, yeah.
Additional work granted them, yes.
As far as the $10 million bond, this is 7.3, 15% contingency is about $1 million, let's just say, right?
Correct. 1.1.
So, that would take us to 8.45. It still leaves us some money to do some of the things that we'd like to do at the plant.
Correct. We were talking earlier about $1 million for HVAC is a big
So,
one.
when you get things that are not related to the ACO work that's outlined here, I'm just asking the question, you can tell me how you want to handle it. The installation of the primary tank 1 equipment that we've already bought. Is that going to come in the form of a change order in addition to the contract, and you'd come back to us? Certainly the HVAC, I think you have to come back to us.
Yeah, so the HVAC is a completely different project with a
Right.
completely, we're going to have to spec that all out. It's
We're
gonna
gonna
have to be
bid that
bid.
separately.
We're going
Right.
to bid that separately. As far as like the, the installation of primary 1, that'll be a change order that'll come back, because it's not part of this specific project. It's a change order. You're basically having that contractor provide you a price. It's going to be a change order to their contract to do this unrelated work, so.
Contingency amount for change orders related to the work that's in this contract. The install, my question is then, the install of primary one, when you get a price from them, you'll come back to us.
Correct. Yeah, and if we get a price from them that we're not happy with, we can also take a look at other contractors that do that.
We have
work.
Weiss that we're gonna be looking at also, that they've done 2 and 3 before, similar work, so we can get the price from them on the end.
Why didn't Weiss bid on that? Or did they?
Not,
They did bid on sludge pump installs, so, and that's actually your second action item, but, yeah. It's a very dynamic, frustrating market right now for bidding projects. And this plant, its location on an island, the intricacies and the work that's being done, it's a bit difficult to get pricing, and it's a bit difficult to get contractors, especially in the market that we're faced with right now. And I want to bring attention to a couple of the different items that Ohio had mentioned in his letter with regards to rebidding the project, being that we only received the one bid. I don't think that we're confident that we would end up receiving any additional bids beyond the one that we did receive if we did rebid. So I think, hence the recommendation from Raines to go ahead and award to the bidder that did put in for the project. So
time-wise, it won't work either. I talked to Eagle meanwhile, if we rebid the project, it's gonna take another 6 to 8 weeks before we can bring it in front of you for award. We'll exceed that February deadline, so it put us in a violation mode. There's also the effluent meter, which is gonna be also additional work that has to come in front of you. That's required by Eagle, but again, that's a totally different scope than this. So,
And I think Ray and Linda, as newer members, you had a chance to go down in the lower level and didn't see the empty primary one tank. There were 2 other ones that we did a year ago, 2 years ago maybe now. And if anybody wants to know, if anybody's watching, this is sub-basement work at the wastewater plant, and it's probably 30 feet deep under what you would normally consider a basement. And it's not very pleasant work, a pleasant environment. So this is one of the issues I think you're raising. We're on an island, this wastewater treatment plant, mechanical engineering and construction type work, complicated, not very easy in many times to get equipment in and out
attractive either.
of the building. A lot of it has to be dropped in with a crane.
And when you're in a market where there's lots of projects, contractors pick those that are easier. You know, they like to get in, they like to get out, and they don't want the complications. You know, if there's easy money to be had, they're going to take advantage of that. So, you know, we're at a bit of a disadvantage, but this is a lot of the problem that a lot of projects are facing right now, right? So, you know.
Within the contingency amount, between you as the manager and engineers, you're going to make any change orders that are related to the contract work with approval on staff level. And then the new things that would be added, you'd come back to us.
There is a good chance that there won't be any contingency. We're hoping that, you know.
There always is.
Yeah,
I mean,
so we always hope that that's not the case, but again,
And the reason we do it this way is because, you know, if you've got a hole that's open and you come across a situation where there's additional expenditures associated with, you know, work that's required to finish the project that was unforeseen or something along those lines, a lot of times the process for us is potentially 2 to 3 weeks out for approvals, which then you have idle equipment in an idle project, you know, which could potentially be unsafe and actually cost more money if you don't have those pre-authorized approvals with the contingency that you're authorizing tonight. So, or that the board would authorize, assuming the 15% contingency would be okay. So there's a method and a reason behind that. It's to keep the project rolling and going, so you don't have any holdups to the progress of completion. So.
Read the motion in its entirety with how you'd like to add the contingency.
Based upon a recommendation from the Township Engineers, the Groseal Department of Public Services Commission hereby recommends to the Groseal Township Board the award of a contract with Soros and Gross Company LLC at a cost of $7,341,000 plus 15% contingency for various capital improvements at the Groseal wastewater treatment plant.
I'll move the motion to approve that motion. Is there support?
Right.
Ray Vittles seconded. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Thank you.
Action item 2 is sludge pump install, and we're very fortunate this evening that we have both Io and Ryan here to discuss this project or provide additional detail to this project, but if there's a motion, I can go in and give an explanation.
Read the motion and then give the explanation.
Somebody else got, somebody wants to make the motion.
Read it. I don't want to read it.
Okay.
Oh.
Want to read it,
Yeah.
Dave? Okay.
Make a motion based upon a recommendation by the Township's engineers. The Groseal Department of Public Services Commission hereby recommends to the Groseal Township Board the approval of a contract at a cost of $332,250 with low bidder Weiss Construction for the installation of 2 primary and 2 secondary sludge pumps at the Groseal wastewater treatment plant. The work scope also includes all associated work as listed on the bid submitted December 15, 2022.
There are 4 pumps that move sludge from the primary and the final clarifiers. So basically, when the clarifiers skim off or pull the sludge off of the effluent, these pumps move that waste to the sludge tank, which then we pump out and haul off annually. We already purchased 4 new pumps. The work to install those pumps is what was bid. We did receive 2 bids, with Weiss being the low bidder. This is a budgeted expense. It's work that is necessary. The pumps have already been received. We already have those on site. And the pumps that we have currently are not in good condition, so time is of the essence with regards to getting this work done. That's the long and short of it. Do you guys have anything you would like to add?
There are a couple incidental items added to this besides the 2 pumps. There are some mag meters, 2 mag meters, and 6-inch plug valves. So those are part of the incidentals to the project. So, of course, this also includes some wiring, some junction boxes that are explosion-proof. That's the cost of the project.
Kyle, is on items 3 and 4, which is really the mag meter and the 6-inch plug valves, I mean, there's some pretty substantial pricing differences between Weiss and Monroe Plumbing. Of your opinion that they're going to be able to do the job for what they quoted on this, given that substantial amount of difference?
I would think so, and I can't justify Monroe Plumbing's price. Of course, if you look at item number 2, also there is almost $40,000 difference there.
I saw that one. The one that really stood out were the other 2, though. I mean, and for $16,000 versus $57,900, I mean, either Monroe didn't want the job, or Weiss knows something that Monroe doesn't know.
We've been seeing lots of price disparities. I know Monroe Plumbing is bidding now with Sorensen on some of their elements in the big ACO project. That could have been that, okay, maybe we don't want to mess with this one here. They could have put a courtesy price. Again, I cannot answer why, but we know we need this job done. We need it to be done as soon as possible, and Weiss is lower. So we'll keep control over them as best as we can. So
Weiss is...
Your engineers, excuse me, do your engineers believe that pricing is legitimate for that work, that scope of work,
Yes, I mean, just to replace mag meters, they could buy a cheaper mag meter that you could accept. Mag meters can vary price-wise from being $1,200 up to $20,000. It depends what we need. For this particular installation, we don't need a super accurate mag meter, but we need to replace what's out there. They could have priced something that's on the lower side, lower end. that can still do the job. I don't know what Monroe Plumbing priced. If we specify that type here, we call for a Rosemount 8750. I don't know. It could be the labor cost. It could be the way they price it not to get the job. So, but again, we were going to make sure that Weiss can do it for this much money. And
Weiss is familiar with the plant. They did the rebuild of both final clarifiers and 2 primary clarifiers, last year and a half ago. So they were in that plant for probably in excess of 3 months. So, I mean, they should be familiar with what they priced.
I really cannot justify the disparities at this point, but we're going to hold their price to what they submitted, and we'll make sure they do it for that.
I looked at that, and I think it's a good question, Ray. The fact that they're 35,000 higher, 32,000 higher, 50,000 higher, would lead, if Weiss can do the job with the equipment, and that's the question I think Ray was asking,
Yes.
determine they can.
Well, we're going to make sure they will. So,
Well, they specified, Bill, I mean, they specified the magnator, right? So it's just a matter of who's going to pay what
So
for
I
that,
think
and
that
the
somebody-
difference is going to be labor
Somebody,
cost.
I assume, wasn't that serious about getting the work. I don't know.
well, like I said, I know Monroe has been pricing with Sorenson on the ACO part, so they could be that they're stretch and what it could be.
Resolution we just approved, the one question I forgot to ask, there's going to be a performance bond on the Sorenson Gross contract.
On every contract, we more than $50,000, yes, and a payment bond, both of them. So, yes.
Are there other questions on this? If there aren't any other questions, we have a motion before you.
I think we need a second still. David.
All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
All right, number 3 under the action items, under the revised agenda is the road program design action item. There's no motion that's been formally written for this, being that it wasn't an action item to start the meeting with. What is included in your packet is a memo, and that memo provides for a proposed scope of work for our 2023 road improvement program. Also included this evening at where you're sitting was a revised engineer's estimate that I'd like you to refer to. After the memo came out in your packet, we had a conversation with the chairman, and he made some very good points with regards to some of the scope of the work. And what I'd like to do is to modify what is going to be hopefully approved this evening to reflect the second estimate that's listed on that piece of paper that was provided to you. The top one at 5.5 million was what was included in the packet. What I am recommending this evening is that we move forward with the $6.3 million project, and that scope of work is what's up for discussion this evening, to get your input as to whether you support that or not, or would like to see additional modifications beyond those made between the 5.5 and the $6.3 million project. So,
Well, just for the record, would you take a couple minutes? Can you, Mike,
sorry.
would you go through each project just quickly?
Sure.
And if there's no question about it, if anybody has a chance, that you can just jump in. Let's just take, like, the first one's East River.
Sure.
From
So-
Parkway to Manchester.
Yep, let me back it up a little bit. The DPS Commission spent a lot of time developing a road project list. And that road project list was included in the flyer that went to every resident on this island back in, I think, September or October. So what we wanted to do was make sure that we honored what we told the residents we would do, right? So, this project list that was provided to you is based off of the project list that was basically communicated to the residents. If you refer to page 30 of your packet, that road list is provided for you, and once again is reflected in the project list that was provided to you this evening. So, first segment of road that we would be addressing is East River Parkway to Manchester. The width of that road is 30 feet. Based upon the condition of that road, the current condition of that road, the proposed scope of work would be mill and fill, totaling 3 inches at an estimated cost of around $759,000. Second stretch would
Well,
be...
before you leave that,
Go
the
ahead.
question, why 3 inches there and 4 on all the others?
Based upon the condition of the road. So there are certain areas of the road that are in worse condition than others that mandate a deeper mill. Go ahead. Yep.
Okay, all right.
So that's really the reason why.
Pretty bad, that section of East River.
That section from Parkway to Manchester is not as bad as the section of Grow to the Hickory Island Bridge. But there is the opportunity, we do have the opportunity to be able to adjust these, right? So, we can have that conversation this evening, and if it means that we want to increase that depth, we can do that. Go ahead, John.
I have a question for Sahil. On that first segment, Sahil, there's a paved shoulder on that section.
Yes.
Is that still included in the 30 feet?
We're going to try to avoid that. That paved shoulder is almost 9.5 inches of asphalt, over 9 inches of stone. I remember when we done that technically was for the shoulder, but it's not the shoulder.
So we're not going to mill that.
So we're not going to make that.
Okay. Thank you.
Just better.
Second stretch is Grow to the Meso Island Bridge. That's a 4-inch at 30 feet wide at a cost of $1.1 million. Bellevue, Meridian to East River, that's an 18-foot wide road or stretch, mill and fill 4 inches at a cost of $858,000.
Now, on that project, when I've driven it with John, maybe you, there's all those numbered side streets, 8th Street, 7th Street, 6th Street. I said to everybody, in my opinion, we ought to go back 50 feet from the edge of pavement, and I hope that's built into the cost. I've been telling everybody that. That's my opinion, so how? Because what you have now is, number one, a breakdown in where the cars enter off those gravel roads, and they're always pulling stone out onto the road. That's number one. Number two, the intersection of Meridian, it's a lousy intersection. That whole intersection should be rebuilt. There's stone all over that road the last couple of years. So the radius is on the turns off of Bellevue, that easterly section of Bellevue, are going to have to be looked at and eliminate that problem where there's stone and dirt being carried on the turning movements.
Part of the problem at that intersection of Meridian and Bellevue is that northwest corner, we've had a pretty reoccurring water main break in that area, haven't we? And that's part of the reason. That's probably what broke 3 times in the past 18 months at least. So that's part of why we have that issue in that area, stone all over the road.
Other comments from
referring to the
commissioners,
radius
jump
along
right in here.
Between the bike path and the road, there is that little.
Yep. So we'll take note of that to make sure that when the scope of the work is spec'd, that we include that 50 feet back at those numbered streets intersections, and then also those radiuses on Meridian Road. So Bellevue, Meridian to East River Road with those caveats. West River Road north of Church, 18 feet, mill and fill 4-inch, $942,000. Park Lane north of Church, 18 foot. This is new road, 6 inches over 4 inches aggregate, $785,000. Horse Mill, mill and fill 2-inch, 18 feet, $825,000. South Point, Grow to Brooks Circle, mill and fill 2-inch, $792,000. That's 18 feet wide as well. East River Road, Manchester to Grow, chip seal, 122,000, and then Grow, East River Road to West River Road, 111,000. That's a chip seal as well. The scope of this work is right around 6.3 million, engineer's estimate. And depending upon how bids come in, we could modify some of the areas to either include additional depth or add roads potentially. If you recall, in my memo, I had mentioned 6.3 million is about the first year allocation or first year amount of capital we have to work with. We need to reserve about $1 million for ferry. When they do the Meridian Road Bridge, that is going to be a detour route, so we don't want to repave that next summer, just because it would add to the inconvenience. So we would keep an additional amount of money available to be able to do ferry, that $1 million, which we could use that on that in the subsequent construction year. We front-loaded a lot of projects to 2023. The reason being we're going to have the capital up front, so we'll have the money there rather than having it sit in the bank. We want to put it on the road when construction costs are theoretically going to be less than they are going to be in 2024. The residents, I think, when they have a millage levied, they want to see results and try to get that money into the roads as soon as possible. Also, I feel that bidding these projects as a package, it's all asphalt work, we're going to be able to achieve better pricing, and that you have some economies of scale doing all this same work within a construction season. So that's kind of the idea here, is to try to package this as a much larger project, and thus hopefully get some better pricing based upon the economies of scale standpoint. So that's the proposed project list with the engineer's estimates as far as cost. There are contingencies that are built into these engineer's estimates. I open up the floor to you to discuss.
Okay. A couple comments. Phil, I know you and I have talked about South Point. After I'm done, I would like to have you talk about South Point. There are two other items, Derek and Sohail, that we talked about before that are not part of this asphalt work, but that should be included. I thought we were going to budget $150,000 to $200,000 for concrete replacement, with targeting Grays Drive, which is the high school, particularly the area from Meridian to Park Lane. There's a lot of bad pavement there. And you mentioned to me when I brought that up that Cadillac Circle, which is off Grays Drive, has a lot of bad concrete pavement. So the question there is, how much do we budget? 150,000, 200,000, and see how that comes in. Then I know, talking to you and John over the past, we talked about money for joint sealing. And I thought we were going to budget $150,000, $200,000 for joint sealing and become part of a bid list that, so how you've worked on with other communities. You go out for a bid, and it could be Woodhaven, Allen Park, whatever, a joint bid where we'd get a better price. I think we ought to do some of those next year, that concrete work. I don't know, as a manager, you
No,
support that.
I agree with you. I think the project list you see before you right now is just pretty much the asphalt work with the bond revenue. You're going to have about $365,000 available next year to be able to do concrete sectioning, but more than likely that's going to be a separate spec with a separate bid with a separate contractor. The guys that we're going to be going with or going after with this scope of work are going to be a different contractor potentially than you would for the concrete stuff. But I agree with you 100%. I mean, that'd be additional work we would do next year with a different bidder and a different project list.
My point is, I would like you to, whatever we decide tonight, I'd like you to prepare a memo to just advise the township board of what our plan is.
Sure, okay.
Excuse me. And include that.
Okay.
Commission feels that hopefully the concrete work is a no-brainer, and the joint sealing, we should have a budget for that. And I'd like you to figure it out. You're gonna come back to us once the bids are taken. The other question I have for you is, this asphalt work and the concrete work. Concrete work's gotta be done while school's out on Grace Drive. On the asphalt work, when are you gonna bid this?
We'd like to go out for bid in March,
No later than March, the end of March.
or earlier.
All right,
Better prices.
yeah,
If you wait longer to bid summer, that's
right, that's my concern. We would wanna bid it in March, okay, no later than March. And, then Phil, I'd like you to speak to South Point.
Okay, in looking at these two proposals, we discussed it over the phone on South Point, and subsequent to that discussion, I went out and drove South Point, and in my own way evaluated it and compared it to some other roads, and I just can't see paving South Point south of Swan Drive as opposed to chip sealing it. That section of road south of the bridge on South Point, basically, a little bit further, it's just not in bad shape whatsoever. In fact, Meridian, in front of the elementary school up towards Bellevue and that, is in worse shape than South Point is south of the bridge. So that being said, I can't see any reason to pave it as opposed to chip sealing it. Now, the north section of South Point, immediately off of Grow, that intersection is bad. It's bad going north on South Point because it's sloped downhill, and the heavy trucks and what have you, as they vehicles, as they slow down, it's created a, whatever you call it, yeah. So that section's bad, and then the section south of the bridge from South Point to Swan Drive that was never chip sealed, it's in pretty bad shape. Those two sections could need to be paved, but I think the rest of South Point could be chip sealed. We'd save an awful lot of money.
Phil, would you say that again, from the bridge at Swan Drive?
From the South Point, in other words, we chip sealed to the bridge.
Right.
We didn't do anything south of the bridge.
Right.
And that section, maybe 150 feet or so from the bridge to Swan Drive, where you turn into Swan Drive, that section's in pretty bad shape. I don't think that could be chip sealed. I think they'd say, no, it's beyond. So I think we would need to pave the intersection at Grow, and I think we would need to pave the some hundred of feet south of the South Point, the bridge on South Point over Frenchman's Creek to Swan Drive. But I think, and then south of that, it could just be chip sealed. I think maybe there was one section that was broken up that would need to be filled. But I think, I think we could save quite a bit of money. In other words, it wouldn't be the 103,000. It would increase from that because we would be paving some sections of it. But I would say we probably wouldn't be maybe another 75 to 100,000 max, as opposed to 792,000.
All right, well,
It's $500,000. We could find some place to put that.
so here's the way I look at it.
Yes.
If you chip seal it in 2023, we're going to chip seal again in 2027. We're going to chip seal again in 2031.
You
We're
think
gonna
you only
chip
get
seal.
4 years out of chip sealing?
That's what they told us in Monroe County. That's what they told us. Go back and check. When we went to Monroe County, they were talking, they do their roads every 4 years.
Well, just for instance, then, why haven't we had to chip seal Grow?
We haven't had a chip seal program.
But I mean, has it needed it necessarily
stood up-
much prior to
It
now?
stood
I
up
mean,
pretty
is
well,
it-
but it needs it now. I mean,
It needs it now.
yeah, and that's been 5 years anyway.
I don't know what they're doing down in Monroe. I know what we're doing over in western New York, and they're doing it about 6 to 7 years at least. No sooner than that.
Right.
And those roads are fine.
Okay.
But
I-
I'll go with the experts.
Well, no, I'm not an expert, but, so, let's say this. My point is that whether it's 4 more times in the life of the bond issue, let's say it's only 3 more times. Give it 5 years, whatever. It's gonna have to be chip sealed 3 more times. That's 300,000 more. And my feeling was, with all the residents that are there, all the dwelling units, why not pave South Point? Just get it done with. But,
Why
I
wouldn't we
think
pave
it's a-
Grow instead?
well, that's a good question.
In other words, if we're gonna, because the same argument would apply to Grow, we're gonna need to do it 3 or 4 times during the bond issue. The argument would have to apply to both roads, and Grow certainly gets more traffic than South Point's south of Swan Drive.
There would be the potential that the county might be more likely to pave Grow than they would to resurface South Point, so there's that argument,
The only reason I raised the issue, I wanted to have the discussion with Phil, because I'm not opposed to chip sealing. I've driven it again since we talked. It's a good road. It drives much better than Horse Mill.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm not opposed to changing that, to trying to chip seal it. And that would give us a better chip seal package. So we'd have 3 roads. We'd have Grow, that section of East River we did, between Manchester and Grow, and then South Point. And they'd all be tied together.
When did we chip seal?
Well, I'm going to guess 5 years ago, maybe.
Oh, no, it was more than that.
Okay,
Yeah.
6 years.
you could then take some of those savings and reapply them to East River Parkway to Manchester and up that to 4-inch if you'd like. Because, Bill, you do have a point. That stretch of road isn't that great. I drove it today, and
And let's just do that. Let's just do that for now, see what the bids come in at. So, based on your assessment, Phil, and I respect your assessment of that, let's just go back to chip seal. That would give us a couple of good miles of chip seal and maybe 3 miles, I don't know. If we did that section of East River, then Grow, and then South Point.
But we're still gonna have to do those 2 intersections.
All right, so. those
yeah, and
two-
I got those noted
Yeah.
here. Yep, that
Yeah.
stretch of road and then the 2 intersections, yep. The 150 feet or whatever it is between the bridge and Swan. Yeah, okay.
So with that, I want to ask the table, are there any other roads that you're aware of that should be this chip seal? Now, in the future, I just want to indicate that if you look at Meridian north of Bridge, it's not in bad shape, but I think it doesn't drive, there's a lot of breakup starting to occur in it. That could be a chip seal project someday, and maybe we do Bridge or something else out there, I don't know. But that's for the future. This has been the solid program we've had. And if the bids come in high, I guess, then we might have to drop a project like resurfacing Horse Mill. Or we'll just have to make that decision when the bids come in.
If the bids come in lower, we might be able to add some projects. We had talked at one point in time about Church west of Meridian, resurfacing that. So, there's different things that we can do. This is not set in stone, but it gives us a bid list to work off of and a scope of work.
Manager, will you rewrite this program?
Yes.
Just would like to advise, I think everybody would agree, it'd be good to let the township board, not asking them to approve anything, that we've authorized engineering, that this is our plan for next year.
And just so you're aware, the board already authorized at least the start of the process of the bond. So that's currently in its 45-day window. So that's in progress to bond for, this work, and should be timed well to comply with when we need the funds to be able to meet this construction season. They actually are, based upon bond counsel's advice, we're actually going to package the road bond with the ACO bond to achieve a better bond rate and also save on some of the bonding costs. So they're actually going to partner those two together, and that's all
Idea.
in progress.
So.
So yeah, I'll put a memo together that'll.
Write your memo.
Yep.
Well,
But
mem-
include the, I'm sorry, Dave.
Are you going to do a memo, or are you going to do an action item to the board to approve?
No, My thought was, we can authorize the engineering to take place. Once the bids come in, then we go to the board.
So generally, because engineering is a professional service and we're already contracted with Rains to go ahead and do that work,
Go ahead and do
we
it.
would just go ahead and do it. Obviously, any kind of award of any project would go to you for
Okay.
recommendation.
Okay, well, I wasn't sure whether you wanted to, like, get board pre-approval, if you will, on this plan,
If you feel that would be,
and then, subject to, changes as required based on what the bond comes in at, or,
the board would ultimately have the final decision on whether they wanted to authorize the contract or components of the contract for specific roads, when they got to
well,
approving it.
what I would probably, I think what I'm trying to do is not do it road by road.
This is our plan.
This is what we're gonna do with the ability, given back to the commission, to this commission.
Sure.
To switch out grays for grow, or, whatever we think is necessary based on the monies we have available.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a different situation in that we're picking and choosing what roads, but traditionally, like, having the engineers develop a specification and going to bid doesn't normally go to the board, but this is a bit more, there's a lot of discretion here on what roads we're paving, and if you feel like the board should review that, that's completely up to you guys, and I understand that.
Well,
100%.
what that does, I think, is it says, okay, I don't want to say this wrong, but the board's not going to get in the way of getting this project done. If somebody doesn't want West River done, but they want Gray's done first, I think if we can get approval from the board for this whole package, subject to changes, as we.
Not even that, I mean, all we're doing is,
And then we can just keep right on moving.
but when we get the bids, we'll have to take that to the township. I'm not opposed to having this go to the board just for their approval of our plan. This is our plan.
Okay.
I don't want you to hold up either. Wait till January 9th. If you want to get started,
Well,
Yeah.
if I may, if we give them a menu,
Here.
select, that would be better than doing a whole package, spending all the money on design, permitting, all that stuff, and not taking it out.
Oh, okay, all right.
That's where I see the problem. So if we decide which roads we're gonna do, let's get to those roads, present to the board, get approval, and run with it.
We could do that on the 9th, so, but tonight you're gonna recommend the scope of work, basically. And then I'll bring it to the board, and you and I will work together on
yep,
that to
yeah.
present it to them on the 9th.
so, and just say that we wanted them to be aware of what our plan is, our plan to move forward for the construction season. This is it. It's based on our commitments and our published commitments. And, everybody okay with that?
I do have a question, Bill.
Ray, go ahead.
Is the approach going to be that we are going to contract to do all this work at one point in time with, so like the paving guy, we go out for a bid with them and we say, we want these five sections done. Theoretically, consecutively, whatever, such that we maximize the leverage of our dollars spent, right? So they get all their equipment here, they're doing it, they do one road section, they just move right on. I mean, I hope that's what our approach is, right? Okay.
So if you need to speak, Sal, you can come up to the,
Yeah, the project could be bid as a package.
Right.
It could be section 1 for this road, section 2 for this road, but one bidder will bid all of them. it becomes difficult if the township decides and finds out that two bidders came in cheaper on this road and more expensive on that, one on this, cheaper on that road and more expensive on this. We don't like to commingle contractors on projects like this. So that's why we prefer to bid them. Hopefully they're all consistent with their pricing, that they'll be low on all of them. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Makes it difficult just having 4 or 5 contracts, let's say, to make the point a little bit more clearer. If we have 5 contractors that bid these 5 streets and everyone was low on one of the streets, we don't want to have 5 different contracts. So,
You bid the asphalt work,
right, then the chip
fill and
sealing
fill
works.
for one.
Right.
The chip seal, probably another. Concrete work, another.
Correct.
Joint sealing would be
Joint sealing is going to be a cooperative bid. Allen Park is going to go, let's
cooperative
say,
bid.
they're going to be bidding that project, then we're going to have Riverview, Flat Rock, Trenton, everybody else piggyback on that project. So you won't incur the bidding cost.
So the cooperative bid idea, it's through the network of public works people that John is active in, and I think Derek is. They're bidding it together.
Oh, yeah.
And all we gotta do is give them our volume. How many linear feet, miles of
Right.
of joint
Or
sealing we
or
wanna
even
do.
what our budget is.
And then they'll select a contractor and he'll work maybe in Allen Park and then come here and then go to Woodhaven and, right?
Realize lots of savings for a township that way. You don't have to go through the bidding process. Plus, we get a better price for a bigger package.
Right.
So please, in your summary, you're gonna show the chip seal on South Point. You're gonna show a dollar amount, is it 200,000 for concrete work?
Yeah, right about that. If you want to do $100,000 in joint sealing, which I think we had talked about, I think, last year.
More than that?
The more the better. I mean, it's preventative maintenance. The more you do, the better you are, because you could buy some more life on some of the roads that are opening up, preventing the water from getting in the bay.
Everybody understands the money is that the taxes were levied with your tax statement that you already got in the mail.
I noticed.
Yeah, I noticed too. So for this year, so that money is not part of the bond money. So we raised, theoretically, we'll raise over 900,000. And that'll go for a lot of the engineering costs up front, but that'll pay for the concrete work, it'll pay for the chip sealing work, right?
Yeah,
I
there's
mind at
going to
least.
be about $100,000 probably in the initial year of bond expense. So of the 900 and some change, they have about 800,000 that'll come over to be put with the 6.5 million.
Besides the
that we're-
bond money, right.
And engineering costs have been included in these construction estimates, so.
And so when you rewrite this, just understanding before we approve it, it lists all these projects with South Point, except for those 2 intersections. Those 2 areas you identified would be part of the chip seal, right?
Yes.
You have a question?
Yes, I'd like to take another approach and talk to the county about waiving permit fees, inspection fees, having to do the inspections, since we're doing their roads. We'd like to talk to their higher echelon a little bit about.
I assume you would do that because we've always gone, when we do the engineering, which we want you to do, not the county, we've always asked them to waive the fees. So you need to do that. And they'll send an inspector whether we want them to or not, but we're not going to pay for them.
Plus, that's fine. They can inspect it all they want. So.
That answer your question?
Yes. Just want to make sure that you're okay with it.
And so you know what to do in the report.
Yes.
We're going to have a blind resolution here to approve this program tonight. The only other thing is, when I do, and I've talked to you about this before, when I do a projection of a cost estimate, I hate to see this figure of $769.21. Why don't you round off? It's an estimate. Come on. And I think your report ought to reflect that. I would round all these off to the nearest 10,000. No, the nearest, round off to like the first one should be 760,000, and then 1,170,000. I mean, this is kind of ridiculous. It's an estimate. You know I feel that way, so
I don't blame you, but again, My staff.
all they
is kind
are
of-
is-
When they price things, they price them to the
Well,
penny. so-
I know, but for your report to them,
Multiply, and that's the number.
your report,
Yeah.
round it off to the nearest upward 10,000 figure, okay?
Sounds good.
And,
Totally wrong estimated answer.
so with all we've talked about, I guess it's in your hands. Everybody understand what we're doing?
Yep. Yep.
Now, again, do any of you have a road project that you live with or see every day that should be added to this? This is what we're gonna do next year. Oh, yeah. All right, so we have a plan. I'm gonna ask, based on good faith, I'm gonna ask for a resolution to approve the plan we discussed tonight. I'll make that motion. Dave, you gonna support it?
Support.
No further discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
I,
Remind you, so the project list that we discussed tonight, the project list that was in the flyer, the project list, in both of those documents was a project list that we formulated over a period of, a year and a half, almost 2 years, as we were putting together our village proposal. So, want the residents to be confident that it's not on a whim that these projects were put together, and the list was formulated over a long period of time with a lot of analysis. So, we're staying true to what, we've looked at over a period of over 24 months as far as what scope of work we were looking at and price the millage at and the bond and all that sort of stuff. So this is a project that we've put together over a long period of time, has given a lot of thought to it. So thank you for your support and voting in favor of that project list. I think that the residents will be happy once we get some of those roads repaved. Thank you for that support this evening. We did cover under my report the project design, or program design, so we've already done that. Water loss report, 12.446% through October. Some of the information that was put together in the packet was put together earlier, being that we were going to have a meeting a couple of weeks ago. Some of these numbers might be off a little bit, so, but that's through October is the water loss report. Same goes with the project status report.
Derek, can I just interrupt you for one
Yes.
question on the water loss report?
Yep.
Why is the September such an anomaly on a consistent basis as you look through here where, you have such huge adjustments that are made during that month time frame?
Yeah, so we bill quarterly for our water use in the township. We're billed monthly from GLWA. So what you'll see is our bills are always behind when their bills are received. So what you see is there's a discrepancy between what we billed and the gallons purchased for that month.
Okay,
So more important is the running total, not necessarily a given month.
Right.
So that's
all right,
kind of the reason being.
that explains
And
it.
then you have our consumption is obviously seasonal, so you'll see ups and downs depending upon the amount of usage within the township, so.
Okay,
Right?
good, thank you.
As far as the project status report goes, actually, Ohio's here, so might as well come from the horse's mouth if you're willing.
One item, this report was prepared assuming we were going to meet before tonight, and it was stated that it is up to December 1st. Since then, things changed a little bit, so I'll go through it and I'll let you know where we're at. As far as the sanitary sewer system televising, we're still missing a few sections that the contractor is working on. On the primary and secondary sludge pumps, we did open the bids and we did make a recommendation to award to Wise Construction. For the HVAC lab units, again, that's going to be part of the capital improvement plan. That's going to be part of the $10 million bond. For the basis of design and plant improvements, we discussed the ACO tonight and the project that's going to be recommended to be awarded to Sorensen Gross. For the asset management, we're finishing the risk evaluation to prepare the BRE for all assets at the plant, the MPDS permit that was received by the plant. For clarifier number 1, again, what we decided to do is, as Derek mentioned earlier, take it away from Veolia and try to give it either to Weiss or to Sorensen Gross to complete. We have the equipment and we just need to get it done. So for the replacement, the VFDs, that was also awarded. We're waiting for the insurance and bonds from UIS SCADA. Once we receive those, we'll get the contracts signed and we'll get them going on it. And we talked about the project estimates a little bit earlier today, so we're all set with that. Thank you.
John.
With that, if there are any questions, that concludes my report for this evening. Yes, Phil.
John, do you have any comments?
I've got a question, especially since Sahile's here. Years ago, we looked at the Park Lane drainage project, and of course, we put it on hold. And one of the concerns back then was we couldn't do our surveying because everything was too wet. And I'm noticing now we're down about 1.5 feet on water. Things are dry. Do we want to go ahead and proceed with doing these surveys such that, I mean, you know, these water changes have been on 30, 35-year cycles. It's not going to go low and stay low. Do we want to get ahead of the game and do anything in there?
Already have a plan. We have an estimate on that. We are waiting for an updated estimate. This estimate goes back about 2 or 3 years ago. So we're putting a new estimate together to.
I thought we had to do more. It was too wet to do surveying.
It was too wet, again, because we couldn't get the cuts on the canal side because it was too wet. And we can finalize that, but meanwhile, we're getting some estimates on the pumps to.
I know the project's going to move right up the scale to have to do it, and that's going to happen when the water's high. And then we'll have the same issue then. Well, we can't.
Yeah, I think we were trying to determine the elevations from the road to the canal.
Right.
But
To the canal, yeah.
the woods were flooded at that point, so.
We have done that since.
Okay.
I have to check. It's been a while. I'll take a look and verify. But meanwhile, we're looking at updating the estimate in case we can get some grants to pay for that.
And we're actually, to that point, we're looking at a couple of, there are some funds out there, some shoreline rehabilitation, shoreline protection grants that we're currently looking at to apply for. We're looking at grant applications for a pump station at the north end of Swan, and then this location at Park Lane. So, you know, if we were able to receive some funding for that, you know, obviously that makes the installation of those pump stations a lot more affordable for us. So, actually, we've got our interns working on those applications. So,
Ray's sake and Linda's sake, where the north end of the island where Meridian comes together with Park Lane, that's where they had severe flooding.
okay.
When the water was high 2 years ago now, or 3, Phil?
Yeah,
And-
2020. Yeah.
And the Sahile group came up with the idea to build a little berm behind the ditch along Meridian to prevent the waters from coming in that way when the water was high, but couldn't get in there to do the survey work, the topo work,
Okay.
topographic work, because it was too wet. And that's what Phil's raising. So you're going to look into it? And
I have to look into it. We may have done it, but I'll check. And if not, it's a good opportunity to do it now when the water is low. So.
Any other comments? John, we never got to you.
I'd just like to mention to everyone that with the severe cold coming in, if you have a meter pit or your line's prone to freezing, such as people have meters in their garages, please let your water trickle a little bit for the next few nights. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a frozen and broken line. That's all I have.
Good comment, John. Anyway, go around the table. Dave, anything?
No, it's already been mentioned, the board at the last meeting approved the resolution to issue the boards, so it starts a 45-day clock ticking. Right, for the bonds.
Very good.
All right, thanks, Les. Bye. Sorry about that. Les got kicked out. He was just calling me to tell me to tell you Merry Christmas, Happy New Year from Northern Michigan, and he wanted to say thank you for letting him be in attendance at the meeting to listen to what's going on. So, yes, yeah, that's why he's not here this evening. He headed up north to beat the weather so early. So, but
Yeah, that was it.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks, everybody. And from the DPS Commission to all of you, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and the same to our residents. With that, the meeting stands adjourned. Well,